Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 11:30 session of Big Mountain Data and Dev. Today, we will be talking about threat modeling for fun and security with Chad Larson. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A on the right side of your screen, or you can put them in the Slack room under BMDD_room and the number 3. Take it away, Chad.
Thanks, Andrea. All right, this is threat modeling for fun and security, probably mostly security. I'm Chad Larson. I work as an application security engineer at a local company called Health Equity. I've been there for 4 years. We have an agile workplace, and our Scrum teams, there are many, work in 2-week sprints. So this is a practice that we use there at Health Equity. And so I'm going to be, depending on you guys working also in agile Scrum teams, for this to probably work as well for you as it does for us at Health Equity. Health Equity is primarily a Microsoft shop. And so this will be doing a live demo on the Microsoft threat modeling tool, but we will be talking about other aspects of it. And you don't have to have Microsoft everywhere to utilize the tool. So don't have that put you off if you're a Java shop or you just do JavaScript or something like that. All right, let's get into it here. So here's what we're going to cover today. Secure development lifecycle, the why, the goals, talk about the practice of threat modeling, different types, and specifically the Microsoft threat modeling tool. And we're going to do a live demo with that, and then talk about how to identify threats with the moniker Stride. Here's the Slack channels. So we're in room 3. If you have questions or something like Andrea said, you can go there to post questions and comments. We do like feedback. All right. The SDL, Security Development Lifecycle. I don't know how many of you guys have heard of this one. I became an application security engineer at Health Equity in the summer of this year. So some of these terms were fairly new to me. I'm used to a term SDLC. Just to provide a little background here, these two are not to be confused. We're going to be talking more about the security development lifecycle. And if we look at both of these side by side here, the SDLC, software development lifecycle, it's talking about the whole process from design to deployment of your software. The SDL, see what they did there? They just combined the words lifecycle into one. Pretty sneaky, Microsoft. And this is really the security and privacy aspects of the SDLC. So just be aware that I will be using both of these terms, and there is a difference here. So why do we want to conduct threat modeling? Well, it helps us with these 2 points right here. It gives us consideration of our threats and weaknesses, and it helps us document our system. So we have some goals associated with this process. Threat modeling is really a conversation, and here's what we want to get out of it. Number 1, we want to make sure that everybody understands what we're talking about and that the system gets documented. Maybe you have new team members, maybe you're a whole new team that was handed this set of software. So we want to make sure that everybody has their hands around it before we start making changes or additions to it. We want to be able to evaluate the whole surface area, and we want to come up with some mitigation strategies. You can think of this like maybe zombie proofing your house. So you might start with a schematic or a blueprint of your dwelling, looking at any openings, windows, doors, ground level, balconies, etc., and then come up with some strategies of how you're going to board up certain entry points or thicken the doors or something like that. That's basically what we're doing with our software here. So in practice, with your team, there's going to be some brainstorming. And again, remember, it's a conversation. We're trying to keep it comfortable. We want to make sure that everybody understands, and we're doing our best to consider all the possibilities for how the bad guys could do something with our software, or even the unknowing people who might not have evil intentions, but just could get around our things that we think are safeguards in place. So we got to hold these design sessions. We got to think about what we're going to do to address the problems and looking for defects in the trust boundaries. Okay. Threat modeling improves the SDLC, the software development lifecycle, in the following ways. So we have, first of all, there's a huge cost of fixing bugs or defects that have made it all the way into production. Usually we have to stop the presses and stop any current sprint work we're doing. Maybe there's some leaks or other information that we have to report to the public. So it can be quite costly if we let bugs get out that far into production. Businesses can't really afford for web security to be the responsibility of a single team. And in the past, it's been the responsibility of a security team at the end of the process, playing cleanup. And often it's difficult to bolt on solutions at that point if we didn't think of these things up front. And we have business owners saying, we have to roll this out, we have to get live. So we need to implement secure measures while the application is being developed, not just at the end here. Shift left, a new term that I learned this summer. I don't know, maybe I was under a rock, but apparently this is a big deal in the security place. And they always talk about shifting left. So shifting the security aspects earlier in the development process, like into the design phase, is where we want it to be. So we can be considerate of any of these aspects before we start writing some code. And how do we do that? Well, we're going to show you with the threat models here. So there's a couple of different types of models we can create. Basically, you have text or a picture. So we can make a checklist. You can find questionnaires online. You can make up your own questionnaire. I haven't, in Googling, been able to find a complete checklist. We do have one at my workplace that we use, but it has been marked as proprietary. I'm not allowed to share that. But I will show a couple of questions about how we come up with something like that. And then, of course, drawing pictures. I mean, you can do that on paper or a whiteboard. It's free and easy, but sometimes those things can be difficult to update when systems change months down the road. Then you have to redraw everything, and you can't just edit an existing whiteboard. Maybe you took a picture of it, but it's not as editable there. So there are some free resources here. Of course, the first two I mentioned, you can just write your questions down on paper or in a spreadsheet or a notepad or something. You can do your whiteboarding. And then there's a couple of free tools out there. I believe there may be additional ones. You could just use Visio or something similar to that. Lucid Charts has a free offering on their website. I don't know if they're really leaning toward threat modeling though. But two free tools stand out to me that are free and available for everyone. And those are the OWASP Threat Dragon and the Microsoft Threat Modeling Tool. I'm not going to be going into the Threat Dragon as my company is a Microsoft shop, and a few people had jumped the gun starting with the Microsoft Threat Modeling Tool. We just decided to standardize on that, but I will talk for a second about the Threat Dragon here. So making up your own questionnaire. And I do recommend this option to use, even if you like the data flow diagrams that you can draw. It's still nice to have questions as talking points in your threat modeling discussions. So I highly recommend this. You can use it in conjunction with or on its own. So some of your questions could include things like, what I've put here. Are we parsing data from across the trust boundary? Are we accepting file uploads? Are we using secure protocols? Is there sensitive data involved? These are things that will help us as developers, testers, business analysts, product owners to sit back hopefully and say, oh yeah, we do need to be careful of that. We are transmitting the bank balance. I forgot about that one property, or, we're parsing this thing that came in, or we're taking a file upload of images of checks, but we have to make sure that there's not some script embedded in there or something. So, you can bolster up a list of questions that you want to ask about these different topics, and that can really help your threat modeling conversations. So the next option is the Threat Dragon. It's both a website application and has desktop applications for Mac and Windows. They say Linux is coming soon. It's free. If you use the website application, it is tied into GitHub. So you use a GitHub login and you can, it sounds like you can tie it into some of your repositories that you already have out there, which is interesting since GitHub is a Microsoft property now. So either way, you're kind of going with Microsoft in one way or another. It's available at this address. And then we have the Microsoft Threat Modeling Tool. They don't have a cute icon or logo, so I just have to use a screenshot for them right here. This is a downloadable desktop application. It only works on Windows, which is probably not surprising to you. It is free. It's fairly easy to learn and use. And it has customizable templates. I'll show you a little bit of that. And it's available at this website below here. Now, this is the most current one. There's a previous version. It was a Threat Modeling 2016, but its end of life was a year ago. It's still available for download. You can just Google that. So if you'd rather not have an evergreen product, always checking for the latest, or you don't want to be tethered that way to Microsoft, you can still download and utilize the 2016 version. All right, let's get into some live demo here. This is what you all come to see, I'm sure. Let me find where I put that. All right. Can you guys see that okay? Does that look all right, Andrea? So here's the threat modeling tool. We're going to pay attention to basically these two, and mostly this guy right here, create a model. Before we create a new model, we have the option to choose a template that we want to use. There's already something out here for Azure. We're going to go with the SDL knowledge base one here, and there's something for the medical device model. There are other ones available out there. I believe Microsoft keeps them on GitHub that you can download or contribute if you made a template yourself. And then this is just for how to, reopen one that you've already worked on, or somebody sent you, something like that. So let's just get into create a brand new model here. You can see we're looking at what appears to be some graph paper. And this guy, We have 4 panes here. The main one is where we draw our diagrams. Down here is our messages. Over here is the stencils, they're called. And in the lower right here, we have the properties for the stencils that we place on the diagram. So let me just close up some of these so we can get a better overview of what we have here in the system. So we have processes, external interactors, data storage of various kinds, data flow. This is how data moves from one process to another, or a process to a database or an interactor. And then we have some trust boundaries. These are really essentially the same thing. They just have one is a line and one is a rectangle that you can drag around. It just depends on how you want to draw and use the trust boundaries. And then there's a free form down here. So there's a couple of ways to put things onto the background here. You can right click and choose that you want one of those stencils over there on the right, process or a data store or whatever. You can just put this on here. This gives you the generic, so the top level one right here. Or you could, drag something and you get the same thing over here, whatever is easier for you to do. And if you don't want something generic, you can always go expand out the list and pull over specifically what you're looking for. You'll notice that these have a little bit of difference to them. There's an icon, there's some pre-configuration information. We'll see that down here in the properties in the lower right corner. If I click on this guy right here, and oh, come on, I wonder why it's not playing along. Okay, for whatever reason. Okay, so I've highlighted this generic data store right here, and you can see I have the properties down here, and I can set some of these. I'm not going to get into every property here. It's a little tedious to do that, but you guys are welcome to play with this all you want and figure out how you want to do some things. You'll see if I click on this guy right here, the SQL database that came from under the same stencil type here, it's got a few choices filled in here, the type of it, and a different name here. And, you can still put something in here. I could call this my Oracle database or my Oracle SQL database if I wanted to. So you can change the names up, which lends a little more information to the documentation you're providing here with this. All right, so let's do a pretty simple little diagram here. If I want to get rid of these guys, I can highlight and delete them, or choose delete there. So I can start with a fresh slate. And let's do something pretty basic. Let's say we're going to have a human is going to send something to our web server. And then we're going to store that in a database. And you can see that this is why I like to keep this side panel of the stencils here collapsed, because sometimes it can be a lot to scroll through here. So now I've got in my database, let's say we're going to put it into a SQL database. I like to space these out a little bit. Can you guys see that all right? Should I zoom it in here? I like to space them out a little bit so that my data flow lines don't get too tight here, because they're little arcs that you're going to see in a second.
Can you zoom in just a little bit?
Okay. How's that?
Much better.
You see that? Okay, thank you. So let's go look at our data flow. We've got some data flow right here, and they've got some predefined ones for us. So we could specify what kind of data flow we have going on here. This is, pretty useful again for the documentation and to help identify where threats might be. We have less of a threat, of course, if we're using HTTPS over HTTP. So we like to see that on there. So let's say we only have HTTP, and I'm going to put this guy in here. I can connect the ends of this guy. I don't have control over where this tag goes in the middle, but well, I guess I do a little bit that way. But if you do something that's too tight, if this guy were a little closer here, it's harder to make those things work. But okay, so I can put this guy right here, and I can drag another one out here and attach it to these points. So there we go. I've got a good start. And maybe I just want to call this something else. I can click on this guy and I can say, this is input. And we'll make, we'll make this one be output back to the user. So now we need some other data flow going from the web server out to the SQL database. I can go ahead and drag something here, or the generic if I wanted to, or I can do it this slick way where I can click 2 items and then right click to say, look at this, I just want a bidirectional. And that drops a couple of arrows here. It looks like 1 arrow, but actually it's 2 arrows here. So I can do that. Come on. Sometimes it takes a minute to click into the right thing here. And I can do another input and output here, or leave it as generic data flow if I want. So this is how I could, set up a simple drawing here. Now, this provides some documentation, but it doesn't give me a lot of help just looking at this to see what the, what kind of issues I may be experiencing. So there's this analysis view right here. So right now I'm on this guy, the diagram, and here's the analysis view. And when I look at my analysis view, suddenly the tool becomes a little more useful here. Why am I having trouble? There we go. So we can see that the tool comes up with some threats that it thinks we have here. So there are some possibilities. We have them. I guess we don't need that one. So we have, descriptions and categories, and we can sort and search on these guys by this, and we can see what's going on. We can also click on one of these, and then down here in this section down here, we can see, and maybe I can make this a little bigger here. Okay. Sorry, this is not grabbing sometimes. Man, I'm really having, okay, well, we'll pull it out for now. So you can see here, I have some detail if I want to look at all this on the specific threat that I'm highlighting down here. Okay, there we go. I got it a little bigger here. So you can see what's going on here. You can change some of the details here, and you can set a status on this. You could set something up to say, hey, we need some investigation. It's going to add information about who and when this was updated for our records here. And it tells us what's going on. So we got a human user who could spoof us. So this is kind of nice. These are all high priorities. And these are the interactions. Now it's a little bit confusing here because I have input outputs, and here I called this input and here I called this input. So maybe this is something that I should name differently so I can tell which one I'm doing. I can come back to this guy and say data in, and I'll call this one data out, just to be a little more clear. Let's go back to our analysis view, and you can see now I have changed. So it tells me where the problem is on my interactions here. And this is dynamic, so it's great if I add some other things into here, or I want to, make this a little more complex in what it's doing. The analysis view will be updated to show me additional or fewer threats with what's going on there. I can also go up here and change the name of the diagram itself. Oh, I guess I have to go back to here. I can change the name of my diagram. This is, let's call it my rough overview. So now I've named this diagram, and I can add additional diagrams. So I can make another one that I want to call the, let's say the web server. So maybe I want to explode out some detail about the web server itself to show some inner workings, but I still want to have this level of the diagram be just this top level overview that I could show to maybe some non-developers, some business people in my organization who don't care so much about all the level of detail that I'm going to put in there. And if we go back into our analysis view, you can, hey, come on, it didn't update from diagram 1. It was supposed to. Well, probably when I save it and come back into it. I've seen it update at the moment we do it, but I guess it's going to be a little finicky for the demonstration here. So basically, we can, if we went ahead and built out something in the web server over here, we can see additional things with their diagrams. So then we know, where we're looking for this to go pull up the right information, which diagram we want to go to address that information there. Okay, let's go back into our design view here for the diagram. And I want to add a trust boundary here. Let's take a trust boundary for a line, and we'll just put it right over here. This is a generic. Let's see what kind of options we have. Oh, we have an internet here. I could either change this out, delete it, and drag over the internet, or I can right click it and I can say I want to convert it to, and it gives me from a generic into one of its more specific ones defined there. So I just want to convert that into an internet boundary. It doesn't do a lot of change, but it just documents it a little better and includes this icon that's a little different. And maybe I want to move this up so that internet boundary is not overriding the output. And maybe I want to also do some kind of a, let's put in my rectangle here. Oh, come on. And let's show this kind of a boundary over our database. So again, they're the same. They just display a little differently. It's whatever you want for your diagram, how you like to represent it, or what makes sense to your organization. So you can show these things with a line or boxed in. Let's go back over to our analysis view now that we've added some trust boundaries and see what we got. Oh my goodness. Now look, we've got 34 threats displayed. Oh, and it finally updated. Now we see rough overview here. So not every case, we still have some diagram ones that haven't been updated yet, but maybe just because I put new ones after the fact of changing the name, now it's gonna update trust boundary issues with this. So I get the rough overview here. So you can see we have a lot more things to look at. And we could still see that I have the one that I marked as this guy needs investigation. Maybe a lot of these you don't even want. The one thing that this does do is it brings up just about every possibility of a problem that you could have. And so there's, I wouldn't say duplicate, but there are some that once you take care of the issue, then multiple of the threats will disappear. So you don't really have to address 34 different threats here. But again, it brings it up to some documentation and a talking point with your team so that you guys can discuss, oh, what's with the internet boundary here? What kind of trust are we expecting to be crossed over here? Why are we using HTTP instead of HTTPS? Let's change that. And so, I guess it's not going to let me convert this one, but you can come in here and decide what you're going to do to make this a better design so that you have fewer threats, and you've at least discussed with your team what they are and what you're going to do about them. Let's see. So down here at the bottom of the threat list, we have an export button. This will export into CSV, and we can give it a name. We'll call it threats. So this is something that you could share with somebody. Let me open this guy. Here's what we got out of that. So there's no pictures with it, but at least you have a list, and maybe you want to take this and work on it, make some tickets in your Jira or your TFS or whatever you're using for a ticketing system to address these things. And you can share this with business people or others who don't have the threat modeling tool and aren't likely to install that. So it gives you some ability. Now there's no tie-in here. This was strictly an export. So it's not like if I go change something here or the status that it's going to update into my threat model. Not at all. So let's go look at one more option that I have here. Okay, and that's up here. I have some reports. So I can create a report on this. Did I say custom? I just wanted the full report. Okay. And let's call this report 2. Put it in my documents. And it opens it up here for me into my browser. And you can see I didn't fill in some of the details here, but there are places you can do that in the tool. But this spits out a complete report that I can now share. I can host it on my internal server here. And so other business people could actually get to this and see the threats with pictures and see more specifically what we're talking about. So this could be really good to have for the meeting after you come up with a basic threat model. And then you just want to do a presentation in a room with some others here. So we can see what they're talking about. Here's the rough overview. What we have, 33 of these are not started because I had marked one for needs investigation. And we can see, right here, it's listing out all these possibilities right here in this area with this generic trust border that we have put in place, different kinds of things that could go wrong with our software. So I'm not going to go through the whole report. I just wanted to show you that it's there, what you can do with this thing. So it is a pretty handy tool to be able to draw your data flow diagrams and generate talking points and even keep track, if you want to, of the different threats and what you're doing on them and maybe who's assigned to them on these kind of things. So I feel like that's a decent overview for you guys on that. Let's move on to what is it that we're really looking for in the threat models. So back to the slide deck here. So threats and vulnerabilities that we want to identify. We're trying to identify the threats. Here's something called STRIDE. It's an acronym. This was created, I believe, by Microsoft about 20 years ago. And they came up with this: spoofing, tampering, repudiation, meaning proving that someone did or didn't do something in the system. Information disclosure, denial of service, that has to do with availability, and elevation of privilege, that has to do with authorization. So these are the things that we were seeing in our threat model here that Microsoft came up. These are the categories that it put in here. So spoofing, repudiation, you'll see those right there, tampering. So this is where they got that list of the categories from here. Someone a few years ago added the concept of privacy. We ought to be looking for privacy too, which is a good point. So some people have actually reordered the acronym to be striped, but STRIDE is the most common that you'll hear. All right. So in summary, security issues should be identified and fixed by developers early in the development lifecycle, the SDLC. The application security problems are the easiest and most cost-effective to solve at the source. I think we all know that. But sometimes it's hard to convince our business owners of that, who just want to hurry things out the door. So hopefully the threat modeling can give us some teeth when we're trying to stand our ground on needing to ensure the software is secure before it goes out. So here's a quote that I got from a GitHub document online, and it's a pretty good resource. It's a white paper. You have to give them your email address on GitHub, but it's the complete guide to developer first application security. And then they say, putting developers front and center for application security is the most effective way to shift security left and succeed against the mounting technical debt that can overwhelm even the best teams. I wholly agree. And by developers, I mean the development crew, like developers, testers, anybody else who's part of that design and development process. At our company, we're very embedded with our SRE and our business analyst and our business owner. So we all take part in that development. And I don't mean to diminish the role of any of those people who don't actually write code. So remember, the whole point of threat modeling is really just to ask this one question, and that is, what could go wrong? There are breaches and threats and ransomware coming out every day. We need to take a stand and make sure our software is as secure as possible to prevent these catastrophes from affecting our businesses or our clients. So I hope you'll take the opportunity to look into some threat modeling, to perform some with your team. And it can be, like I said at the very first slide, fun, but we're mainly doing it for the security aspect of it. Here are some resources that are available. Of course, there's a great book, Designing for Security. Adam Shostak, he's the one who went to Microsoft for a while back in the early 2000s and wrote the Microsoft Threat Modeler, which had a different name at the time when it came out in 2007 or 8. But he's got some great information. And in a recent presentation of his from, I think, last year, basically he said, you can buy the book or you can just ask that one question that I had a few slides back, which is, what could go wrong with our software? There's also OWASP, Open Web Application Security. I can't remember what it all is, but they have some great resources for all kinds of security aspects of the system. And they do have the threat model, the threat dragon, that's what it is. GitHub has a few resources out there. There's YouTube and there's Pluralsight courses. Let me point out this one right here that I have as a link. This one is really, really great. Let me pull up my my threat modeling report I have. So right here, here's that link right here, Awesome Threat Modeling. And they have some really good information out here, including the book I just mentioned, Designing for Security, but they have references to a lot of other things. Here's some free things. Here's some paid courses you can take, videos you can get into. So this would be the one of all my resources listed, because I think it includes all of mine here. So they have some really great information out here that you can get into. And if you have Pluralsight, there's some Pluralsight courses. I've benefited from watching one of those by a guy named Lee Allen. So it's question time. You guys can contact me. I don't do social media. For the last year, I've just deleted all social media accounts. There's too much going on out in the world. It's too unsecure and scary out there. So you can reach me by email or at the website, chadlarson.net. And if you guys have any questions right now, I'd love to hear them. I can go back and show you anything in the threat modeling tool that I'm using if you want to see that.
Thank you, Chad. Again, if anyone has any questions, you can type them into the box to the right of the presentation or in the Slack room, BMDD_room and the number 3.
Thanks, guys. It was a pleasure to present this. I'm really getting passionate about threat modeling.